few that are still performing their salah. Move forward, inshallah. Jazakumullah. Closer we sit, inshallah, the more benefit we shall derive and gain. Many young brothers sitting at the back as well requested to come forward and join the main gathering. Jazakumullah. Inshallah, we shall commence our program with the recitation of the Quran Kareem. For this I call upon Maulana In'am, who is the son of Shaykh Mumtaz, to come forward and recite a few verses of the Quran Kareem.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا من أنفسهم يتلو عليهم آياته ويزكيهم ويعلمهم الكتاب والحكمة وإن كانوا من قبل لفي ضلال مبين أولما أصابتكم مصيبة قد أصبتم مثليها قلتم أن هذا قل هو من عند أنفسكم إن الله على كل شيء قدير وما أصابكم يوم التقى الجمعان فبإذن الله وليعلم المؤمنين وليعلم الذين نافقوا وقيل لهم تعالوا قاتلوا في سبيل الله وقيل لهم تعالوا قاتلوا في سبيل الله أو ادفعوا قالوا لو نعلم قتالا لاتبعناكم هم للكفر يومئذ أقرب منهم للإيمان يقولون بأفواههم ما ليس في قلوبهم والله أعلم بما يكتمون الذين قالوا لإخوانهم وقعدوا لو أطاعونا ما قتلوا قل فادرءوا عن أنفسكم الموت إن كنتم صادقين ولا تحسبن الذين قتلوا في سبيل الله أمواتا بل أحياء عند ربهم يرزقون فرحين بما آتاهم الله من فضله ويستبشرون بالذين لم يلحقوا بهم من خلفهم ألا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون يستبشرون بنعمة من الله وفضل وأن الله لا يضيع أجر المؤمنين صدق الله العظيم.
MashaAllah, for that beautiful recitation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us also to recite the Quran with punctuality, inshallah. Now, moving along with the program, I call upon one of our guests from Bolton, who's in Jamaat, Naeem, to come forward and recite a few couplets, inshallah.
It's quite sturdy, so it's fine. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Inshallah, I'll start with the Duru Sharif. I request everyone to participate, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammadin. Together, inshallah. Allahumma صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد اللهم على سيدنا ومولانا محمد جب حسن تھا ان کا جلوہ نما جب حسن تھا ان کا جلوہ نما انوار کا عالم کیا ہوگا انوار کا عالم کیا ہوگا ہر کوئی فدا ہے بن دیکھے ہر کوئی فدا ہے بن دیکھے دیدار کا عالم کیا ہوگا اللہم صلی علی سیدنا و مولانا محمد اللہم صلی علی سیدنا و مولانا محمد اللہم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد محمد ہمارے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے وہ نبیوں میں رحمت لقب پانے والے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے خدا جس کے سینے پہ قرآن اتارے مدثر کہے اور مزمل پکارے خدا جس کے سینے پہ قرآن اتارے مدثر کہے اور مزمل پکارے وہ نور خدا دو جہاں کے اجالے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے جب آئے زمین پر محمد ہمارے فلک نے زمین پر بچھائے ستارے جب آئے زمین پر محمد ہمارے فلک نے زمین پر بچھائے ستارے اٹھے سرزمین عرب سے یہ نعرے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے وہ نبیوں میں رحمت لقب پانے والے محمد ہمارے بڑی شان والے
MashaAllah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all the true love of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. We have gathered here today to listen regarding Sayyidina Khalid ibn Al-Waleed radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. The Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, they were the best of this ummah. There's nobody better than the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. They were chosen by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accompany Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They were blessed with the blessed company of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhu states, "Man kana mustannan falyastanna biman kad mat, fa innal hayya la tu'man alayhi al-fitnah." If somebody wants to follow in the footsteps of somebody, then he should follow in the footsteps of those that have passed away. Because those that are still living, they are not free from fitna, they can fall prey to fitna anytime. And thereafter he further states that the best of this ummah is none other than the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum. He further says that أَبَرُّهُمْ قُلُوبًا وَأَعْمَقُهُمْ عِلْمًا وَأَقَلُّهُمْ تَكَلُّفًا. They were the most pious, the most knowledgeable, and they're the most simple individuals. اختارهم الله تعالى لصحبة دينه ولصحبة نبيه ولعشاءة دينه. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specifically chose them for the companionship of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and for the propagation of the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These were the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala anhum, the best of this ummah. And from amongst the Sahaba, obviously there were different levels amongst the Sahaba, with the best being Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And there were approximately 124,000 Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu anhum, and there were different levels and different ranks amongst them. And if we were to take the individual who was the lowest rank Sahabi, the greatest wali besides the Sahaba cannot come to the level of the lowest rank Sahabi. Such is the status of the Sahaba Kiram radiyallahu ta'ala, be it the greatest Imam Abu Hanifa, or be it Imam Bukhari, or be it the likes of Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, or whoever it may be. They cannot come to the level of even the lowest rank Sahabi. Why? Because they were blessed with the company of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Once Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala was questioned, and he was asked this particular question, that who is better, Amir Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu or Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala. Amir Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu was Amirul Mu'mineen for a while, and Umar ibn Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala also got the position of Khilafah and remained Amirul Mu'mineen. And during his time, the Islamic empire flourished as well, and he was known as the Umar al-Thani, the second Umar after Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. During the time of Amir Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala, there was a few disputes, etc., which also took place. So this individual asked Abdullah ibn Mubarak that who was better? Who was better, Amir Muawiyah or Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala? And the reply given by that Abdullah ibn Mubarak rahimahullah ta'ala, he says that the horse upon which Sayyidina Amir Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu accompanied Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam in any of his journeys, the dirt which accumulates in the nostril of that horse is better than Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala. You are trying to compare Umar ibn Abdul Aziz with Amir Muawiyah. The dirt which accumulates in the nostril of the horse upon which Amir Muawiyah radiyallahu ta'ala anhu accompanied Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam upon any of his battles or expeditions, even that is better than Umar ibn Abdul Aziz rahimahullah ta'ala. So there are many Sahaba, obviously the best being Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiyallahu ta'ala. Besides that, there were many others, and there were some who stood out due to certain characteristics, like the Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah radiyallahu ta'ala anhuma. They were known for their knowledge, etc. Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was also known regarding his knowledge as well, but regarding his ishq of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one particular Sahabi, inshallah, we shall be talking about today, and listening rather regarding today, would be Sayyidina Khalid ibn Al-Waleed radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, the greatest military commander that history probably has ever seen. And inshallah, without taking much time, I call upon our respected guest, Shaykh Mumtaz al-Haq, to come forward and enlighten us with his words, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa kafa wa salamun ala ibadihi alladhina istafa khususan ala sayyidil rusuli wa khatamil anbiya wa ala alihi al-atqiya wa ashabihi al-asfiya amma ba'du fa'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim bismillahir rahmanir rahim هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله ولو كره المشركون سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد وبارك وسلم. Dear brothers, respected elders, honorable ulama, we begin in the name of Allah, thank Him, praise Him, glorify Him, seek His forgiveness and ask Him to send His infinite mercy upon His beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to guide us all to the right path so that we can all live like Muslims, die like Muslims and rise like Muslims on the day of Qiyamah. Before we start discussing about Khalid ibn Waleed radiyallahu anhu, I just want to clarify one common misconception. And that is, this particular evening or night in many circles, gatherings, is referred to in a special manner. Can anyone remind us what many people might be referring to tonight as? Huh? New Year's Eve? Yeah? Is that what you think? You know, when something is new, what does it mean? When something is old, if someone is wearing a new qameez, does it have a meaning? Can you tell if something's new? You can't tell? If someone's wearing an old one, tatty, stained shirt, and someone's wearing, mashallah, spotless and clear, do you think there's a difference between an old qameez and a new qameez? Someone's wearing an old pair of trainers, someone's wearing a new pair of trainers. Can you tell the difference? Someone's got an old banger and someone has just brought a brand new car out of the showroom. Can you tell a difference? Huh? If the carpet becomes old and stained and it's ripping, and then, mashallah, the next day you come, it's brand new. Can you tell the difference? Huh? Will you be able to tell the difference between tonight and tomorrow? So why is it New Year's Eve then? Huh? New Year's Eve for what? New for 2023. But what does 2023 mean? Historically, we have been so brainwashed. In Quran, there is a surah, Surah Fatiha, first surah, which is recited in every rakat of every salah. 17 rakats are obligatory, faraz 3 rakats are witr, 12 rakats sunnat muakkada on daily basis. How many is that? 17 plus 3 plus 12. You go to school here in Preston? Did they teach you maths? 32, mashallah. 32 rakats a day minimum. That's what every Muslim should recite. And among other things, one of the things which has to be done is La salata illa bi fatihatil kitab. There is no prayer without Surah Fatiha. There's a difference of opinion amongst ulama, fuqaha and sahaba whether when you pray in congregation whether you should recite behind the imam or not. Imam Abu Hanifa rahimahullah is of the opinion when you pray in congregation you don't recite Surah Fatiha or any other part of Quran whether you can hear the imam or not. Other Aimma have other opinion, but whether you recite or not, but Surah Fatiha you will recite yourself when you pray individually. When you pray behind the Imam, sometimes you might hear him if you're praying Fajr, Maghrib and Isha, and if you're praying Dhuhr and Asr, you won't hear the Imam recite Surah Fatiha. But he's still reciting on your behalf. So 32 times a day, in 1 month, say for ease of calculation, 30 days, that's almost 1,000, 1 month. 1 year, 12,000. 10 years, 120,000. And as Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded, you should start praying by the age of 10. And if you live till the age of 60, you would have been alive and around for 50 years almost. And in 50 years, you would have recited 600,000 times, or you would have heard, or at least it would have been recited on your behalf. So if something you've heard or recited and done 600,000 times, do you think you ought to have some understanding of it? MashaAllah, many of you have become huffaz and you might have learned some du'as and surats It might take you 50 times, 100 times to recite it and memorize it. But if there is something you've been doing all your life, 600,000 times, should it have some impact on your mind and heart or not? भी जो सबक 6 लाख दफ़ा ज़िंदगी में आपने पढ़ा हो, सुना हो, याद किया हो, तो उसका कुछ मायना होना चाहिए या नहीं होना चाहिए? What do you think? So what is Surah Fatiha telling us? Firstly, we praying to Allah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. It's a gesture of gratitude. Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Allah is the most gracious, most merciful. Malik Yawmiddin, owner of the day of judgment. Thee alone we worship, Thee alone we ask for help. Is that something you've learned? Does it ring a bell somewhere? إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ اهْدِنَا الصِّرَاطَ الْمُسْتَقِيمِ. Here is where it gets interesting. Ya Allah, show us the right path. What is that right path? صِرَاطَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ. The path of those whom you have favored. You have favored in what way? Given them a nice house, nice job, nice car to drive? Allah has mentioned those Allah has favored. Who? مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءِ وَالصَّالِحِينَ. From the prophets, the truthful, the martyrs, and the pious. The Surah Fatiha end there? Sirat al-Ladina namta alayhim. Allahu Akbar. Does Imam Sahib say, Ehdina Sirat al-Mustaqim, Sirat al-Ladina namta alayhim, Allahu Akbar? What does he say? غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Ya Allah, we do ask you to shower your mercy and blessings upon us like you honored and showered upon these blessed people, Prophet, Siddiqin, Shuhada, Salihin. But Ya Allah, please, غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. Not the غَيْرِ الْمَغْضُوبِ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا الضَّالِّينَ. And ask any alim, they will tell you, every mufassir has said, it implies the Jews and the Christians. Every day of your life, from morning till evening, whenever you pray, you will ask Allah, Ya Allah, yes, show the path of Sunnah, the goodness, but not the path of Jews and Christians. So what is 2023? Is that an Islamic year? Is tomorrow the 1st of Muharram? Tomorrow is 1st of January. Of what calendar? Gregorian calendar. Who was it presented by? A Pope, a leader of the whole Christian world. And it's based on the supposed birth of Isa alayhi salam. And used to be known as 2022 AD. AD meaning Anno Domini, in the year of the Lord. What Lord? In the year, according to Christians, what they believe, the year the Lord, meaning Jesus, was born. So every time, mashallah, Happy New Year, mashallah, what are you saying to another Muslim? Mashallah, the God was born incarnate in human flesh, as the Christians say, mashallah, Mubarak. That's what you are saying. Islamically, Islamic calendar was presented by Umar radiyallahu anhu. The man Rasulullah said, if there was to be another prophet after me, it would have been Umar. When he walks a path, even shaitan runs. And Umar was such a man, people have said, had there been one more Umar, the whole world would be filled with Islam. He got all the Sahaba together. Maulana was talking about the honor of Sahaba. Allah chose them to be in the company of Rasulullah. Ikhtarahumullah. You can become a Hafiz, Maulana, Mufti, Shaykh al-Hadith, whatever, mashallah. But no matter how pious, you can fast every day of your life, spend every night in tahajjud, spend every money, every penny you earn in charity, go Hajj every year, and Umrah every month. But like Maulana was saying, the supposedly lowest of the Sahaba, you're not even touching his feet, the dust on his feet. Umar radiyallahu anhu himself, the envy of all Sahaba, he gathered all the Sahaba and he said, okay, we want to start our new year, our year. Okay, what should we do? And they all agreed, our year will be based on Hijrah. The first day will be the 1st of Muharram, and we will have reference point Hijrah. That's our history, that's our calendar. How many have ever said to anybody, 1st of Muharram tomorrow, mashallah brothers, new year? We've been, Allahu Akbar, westernized, Christianized, Romanized, whatever you want to say. And Rasulullah prophesied. There will come a time my ummah will follow footsteps of Bani Israel, hadwa na'li bin na'l, like this. So the whole world is celebrating. And this year, first time ever, Saudi Arabia, they celebrated Christmas like never before. This year they celebrated Halloween like never before. They celebrated Diwali like never before. Allahu Akbar. We are living in such times, my dear brothers. We don't know what's hitting us left, right, and center. Christians have, this is the Gregorian calendar presented by a pope. Will you allow a pope to come in and give you khutbah here? But that's what he did, and it's mashallah, everywhere people are talking about it. Muslims congratulating New Year. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. What Omar gave with the approval of all the Sahaba, nobody wants to talk. Chinese have their own New Year, Hindus have their own New Year, Jews have their own New Year, Sikhs have their own New Year. So my request, brothers, next, whenever 31st of December comes, please don't say Happy New Year, New Year's Eve. You want to say 31st of December, fine, but don't say New Year's Eve. Because if you do, you are endorsing the Christian history and belief and overriding what Omar did in the presence and approval of all the companions. And I wouldn't personally like to be in that situation. That was side issue. Coming to Khalid ibn Waleed radiyallahu anhu. To understand his status in the bigger picture. And you need to understand the bigger picture to really understand who Khalid was. As Umar radiyallahu anhu once said about him, once he passed away, no woman is ever going to give birth to another man like Khalid again. And no woman did. Such was. But to understand who really was, you got to understand the bigger picture. And I'll give you an example. Some of you, mashallah, youngsters, and most youngsters can't wait to get behind wheels, huh? You know what it means to get behind wheels? You know what it means? To have your own car. And mashallah, people want something not easygoing, banger. They want something with a turbocharger. So if there was a V8, you know what a V8 engine is? Or V1012, mashallah, and it was on display on a table, would it have any meaning to anybody? But when it's under the bonnet in a particular car, yes, and someone pushes the foot, you can hear it. And it sounds amazing because it's in a bigger picture. It's an overall, it fits into the right part. And a lot of youngsters, mashallah, when they want nice alloys. If there was an alloy wheel, mashallah, on display in the masjid forecourt, just an alloy wheel, will it mean anything? But when it fitted on a car, mashallah, convertible, mashallah, whatever, and then it looks nice because it fits the bigger picture. So unless you understand the bigger picture, you won't really know who Khalid bin Waleed was. To understand the bigger picture, and that's what Allah has mentioned in Quran in this verse I recited. This verse Allah has revealed and is repeated in Quran 3 times. And the verse means, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى. Allah is the one who sent his messenger with guidance, وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ, and the true deen, to make it prevail over all other religions. لِيُظْهِرَهُ عَلَى الدِّينِ كُلِّهِ وَلَوْ كَرِهَ الْمُشْرِكُونَ. Even if the mushriks don't like it, Allah has sent Islam. Allah is going to make it dominate over all other religions. Nowadays we got to be careful what we say and how we say it. There's a fundamental difference between spreading and being dominant. Something can spread, but it might not be dominant. I'll give you an example. Just imagine, Allah bring a day when everyone in Preston, Indians, Pakistanis, white people, black people, whoever, European, East Europeans, wherever, everyone in Preston becomes Muslim. So what would have happened? Islam would have spread all over Preston. But will Islam be dominant in Preston? You don't understand. Everyone, just imagine, Allah bring a day, everyone in Preston is a Muslim. But their lives will be dictated, how they live will not be dictated by what your Imam says here. Personal affairs, yes. But it will be governed by what happens in Downing Street. When they say something, even though everyone here might be a Muslim, but they are not dominant. You're passive. Islam has spread but not become dominant. I'm just using it as an example because things get out, and I'm not saying for one moment that's what, Muslims are going to take over Downing Street. No. I'm just giving you an example to explain what this verse means. هو الذي أرسل رسوله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله. Allah sent Rasulullah with hidayat and the true deen to make it dominant over all other religions. Meaning dominant over everywhere. So Islam, there was a time when Islam did not spread so much, but Islam was dominant. And ulama have stated that because this verse has been repeated 3 times in Quran, it has 3 implications. First level of dominance is by reason and logic. That when you talk about Islam, you present it in such a way that doesn't matter what comes in front, what ideology, philosophy, whatever reason, arguments. Your argument about the truth of Islam is so strong that no argument can stand against it. And this occurred in the very life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When Rasulullah was there, doesn't matter who came. If anybody talked to Rasulullah about Islam, whatever question, Rasulullah presented and answered their argument in such a way nobody had an answer. There was a delegation from Najran. Najran was a province in Yemen. They sent a delegation of priests to debate Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Rasulullah put them up in the masjid, had a discussion with them. And the way Rasulullah, I haven't got time to go into that because that's not our topic today. But I'm just trying to make you realize what being dominant means. Rasulullah answered their question. Some of you might follow Zakir Naik or Ahmad Didat. When he used to answer questions on Islam and Christianity, he would present his arguments in such a way, he was very persuasive, convincing. And his argument made sense. People used to accept Islam. So that is first level of dominance by reason and logic, which came about in the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Second level of dominance was political and military. That when Muslims went anywhere, Allah gave them victory. No matter who came opposite to them, Allah granted them victory. They were able to overpower their enemies and foes and control the lands and situation. This came true during the Khilafat of Umar radiallahu anhu. When on one side people had there was the Roman Empire, on one side was the Persian Empire. And they were superpowers of the time with the history spanning over 1,000 years, over a millennium. 1,000 years. They had culture, heritage, history, 1,000 years, over 1,000 years each. Rome was established and founded 750 BC, 753 BC, which means 750 years before Isa alayhi salam. Another 600 years passed. That's 1,300 years of Roman history, where Romans had spread out far and wide. Romans even came to England and conquered England. Most of Europe was part of the Roman Empire. They had an army, massive army. And their generals were trained, experienced. And similarly, the Sassanid Empire, the Persian Empire, over 1,000 years of history, they had generals, likes of Rustam and others. Rustam was their main commander-in-chief, a renowned and respected and highly ranking general. So on one side they had them, and here were the Muslims just starting off. They had regular armies with experience, warfare, 1,000 years each. And the Arabs were just starting off, didn't even have a regular army, no experience in international warfare. But the Romans and the Persians crumbled under their feet. The man in charge at the time was a man by the name of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. You probably heard his name, yeah? He was in charge directing the operations, but the man on the field was a man by the name of Khalid bin Waleed, with whose presence, Allahu Akbar, 2,000 years of military experience just crumbled. 2,000 was over a millennium history, all their achievement, conquest, army, wealth, experience, expertise. And Khalid was a man of humble origins. Allahu Akbar. And then this is the second phase. Third phase is total dominance, where there will come a time eventually, as Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, there will come a time, ma min bayti hajarin wala wabarin. There will not remain a house made of mud or brick in which the word of Islam will not enter. بِعِزِّ عَزِيزٍ أَوْ بِذُلِّ ذَلِيلٍ. Well, anyone accepts it willingly or unwillingly, Islam's going to enter. And when will that be? That will be upon the return of Isa alayhi salam. Who knows, you and I might be around, might not be around, might be your children might see it, or their grandchildren, your grandchildren, whoever. But a time will definitely come, as Rasulullah said, there will not remain a single house made of mud or brick in which the word of kalima and the word of Islam will not enter. And his time, يُهْلِكَ اللَّهُ فِي زَمَانِهِ الْمِلَلَ كُلَّهَا إِلَّا الْإِسْلَامِ. There will be only one way, that is the way of Islam throughout the world. And Isa alayhi salam will oversee all that on behalf of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allah willing, inshallah, perhaps one day, who knows, if Brother Saeed agrees, Brother Altaf will talk about Isa alayhi salam and his return and what implication. But that for another day. But that will be the total and climax of the domination of Islam in the time of Isa alayhi salam. So the first phase, Islamic dominance, reason and logic, which came about in the life of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Second phase, military political dominance. And you can't have dominance without political dominance. Politics is a part of Islam. It's very sad, unfortunate, and that many places people say, brother, no politics in Islam, in our masjids. The whole thing is because even masjids are run by politics. You can say no politics, but the fact is there is politics in everything. You know, when COVID set in, COVID corrected the Muslims, but the Muslims didn't want to know. Why? Prior to COVID, you know, while COVID was around, how were you praying here in COVID? How? With social distancing? Little bit. Do you ever pray with social distancing? Are you praying with social distancing now? If people said, no, from Imam Sah, from tomorrow, please, everybody must pray with social distancing. Will you agree? Will anyone give fatwa? But the fatwa came from Downing Street that you have to have social distancing. So what was happening? Every masjid was praying with, and the fatwa came not from Deoband, but from Downing Street. Isn't that politics affecting your deen? Huh? Politics will affect your deen. And politics is sunnat of all the prophets. Hadith in Bukhari Muslim. Inna Bani Israel kanat tasusuhum al-anbiya. Bani Israel, their politics were dictated by their prophets. So something prophets did. Was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam imam of only the musalla, or did he run everything? Huh? Everything. So what Rasulullah did is politics or deen? Huh? Deen. So your politics is a part of your deen. If you try and sideline politics from deen, you've got to know deen. But unfortunately we don't understand. Oh, please keep politics out. I'm not saying, let's have a political discussion here now, but at least understand the masala. Don't say there's no politics in Islam. Islam is politics as well. Was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu just an imam of the musalla, or was he a politician as well? Huh? Can anybody do politics better than Rasulullah then Abu Bakr, then Umar, then Usman, then Ali radiallahu anhum. They were politicians as well, and they were the glory days of Islam. So politics will govern even how you pray. And tomorrow if the government announces, sorry Muslims, you can't slaughter animals now. It's cruel to animals, cruelty. So what will happen? Will you abide by what's decided, or will you just rebel? It might mean you got to stop eating your burgers and fried chickens and kebabs, but you'll have to comply. You might have to become vegetarian. But if the government says you can't do this, as you know, there are calls every now and then, are you not going to have to respond? You're going to have to respond. So in spite of the fact that Allah has made it halal, but your politics will govern whether you can do it or not. So politics is a part and parcel of deen. And all the prophets practiced it. So it's something which affects the lives of every people. And so political dominance is what is dominance. What is decided in parliament is what goes. You can spread Islam, but Islam will not become dominant like that. Yes, everybody in here can become Muslim. In Preston, in the whole of Lancashire, everybody can become Muslim. But you still won't be able to have your way until the politics is in your favor. I'm not saying you march up to Downing Street tomorrow and try and take over Rishi Sunak. Please don't. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just trying to make you understand the implication of what Allah is saying. Allah didn't say, هُوَ الَّذِي أَرْسَلَ رَسُولَهُ بِالْهُدَى وَدِينِ الْحَقِّ. Allah didn't just send Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make Islam spread. Allah sent Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to make Islam dominant. And historically, I'm not saying now that we got to start working for making Islam dominant here. No, I'm just going over history. This is what happened. This is how it came true in the life of Umar radiyallahu anhu. He oversaw this, but the man in the front line was Khalid ibn Waleed radiyallahu anhu. You probably all heard his name before, yeah? But I want to share with you his relationship with the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He didn't just come out of, somewhere and he became that. He had a special relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. By relationship, I mean literal relationship. In Makkah, the clan was known as Quraysh. In Quraysh, there were many clans, families. Rasulullah's family is known as Banu Hashim. After Rasulullah's great-grandfather, Muhammad bin Abdullah bin Abdul Muttalib bin Hashim. So Rasulullah's family, Hazrat Ali is from Banu Hashim, Abbas radiallahu anhu from Banu Hashim. This was Rasulullah's family from 4 generations up. There was another family, Banu Umayyah. Umayyah was Hashim's nephew. Hashim, he had a brother Abdul Shams. Abdul Shams had a son, his name was Umayyah. So Umayyah had some beef, just say like, what you say here as well, in Preston, beef, to have some beef with someone, grudge. He had some beef with Hashim, and so their rivalry developed. So Banu Hashim, Banu Umayyah. As Usman radiallahu anhu, Amir Muawiyah as well, Amr ibn As, they were all from Banu Umayyah. Rasulullah's mother's family, Banu Zuhra, they were part of Quraysh overall, but the family was known as Banu Zuhra. Amina, Rasulullah's mother, was Banu Zuhra. Sa'd bin Abi Waqas was from Banu Zuhra. Abdul Rahman ibn Auf radiyallahu anhum from Ashra Mubashara, they were from Banu Zuhra. Abu Bakr's family was Banu Taym. Banu Taym. Abu Bakr, Hazrat Talha, who's also from Ashra Mubashara, they were from Banu Taym. Hazrat Umar is from Banu Adi. And a man's family lineage is governed by the father. Whatever clan the father is from, that's your clan. And incidentally in Quran, when Allah has mentioned about Isa alayhi salam, وَإِذْ قَالَ عِيسَى ibn Maryam, Ya Bani Israel, inni Rasulullah ilaykum. When Isa ibn Maryam said, Oh Bani Israel, I am a messenger of Allah unto you. Allah has mentioned about many prophets. And every prophet said, Ya qawmi. لَقَدْ أَرْسَلْنَا نُوحًا إِلَىٰ قَوْمِ فَقَالَ يَا قَوْمِ, O my people. Nuh alayhi salam, Hud alayhi salam, Salih alayhi salam, Lut alayhi salam, Shuaib alayhi salam. Every prophet said, Ya qawm, Ya qawm, Ya qawm. Any Hafiz sitting here? You all read these verses, huh? Ya Qawm. Why didn't Isa alayhi salam say Ya Qawm? Ulama say because and he said Bani Israel, oh you Israelites, children of Israel. Why did he say that? And why didn't he say Ya Qawm? Ulama say because the Qawm of a man is established and determined by his father. Because all these prophets had their fathers who were from that Qawm, so they addressed them as their Qawm. But did Isa alayhi salam have a father? No. So he didn't say Ya Qawm, he said Ya Bani Israel. Allahu Akbar. How was Rasulullah to know these subtleties? A man who did not read or write a single word in his life, and he was able to address the people so accurately, and Allahu Akbar. Anyway, so Banu Adi, Umar radiallahu anhu's father was from Banu Adi, and there was another clan, Banu Asad. Banu Asad was the clan of Khadija radiallahu anha. Hazrat Zubair, heard the name Zubair? He was from Banu Asad as well. There was another clan, Banu Harith. That was the clan of Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah. Abu Ubaidah ibn Jarrah radiallahu anhu, Allahu Akbar. What a man he was. He was a commander of the Islamic armies, and eventually Khalid radiallahu anhu had to serve under him. But Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah had the utmost respect for Khalid in spite of the fact that he had replaced him and had become the commander-in-chief. I'll just give you one example of how a special man Abu Ubaidah was. He was from Makkah, from Quraysh. He accepted Islam right in the beginning, but his father didn't like him becoming Muslim. So when Rasulullah migrated to Medina eventually, Abu Ubaidah came to Medina as well. And when the Battle of Badr took place, his father came with Abu Jahl, with the Meccans. And his father had only one thing in mind. He wanted to kill his son for being a Muslim and turning against the deen of their ancestors. So when Battle of Badr was taking place, everybody was fighting everyone, and Abu Ubaidah's father came looking for his own son because he wanted to kill him. But Abu Ubaidah, out of respect for his father, he would avoid him. He would see him running after him, but he would avoid him and go the other way. Once, twice, 3 times. Abu Ubaidah realized it's not going to end this way. I will just have to do what I have to do. So he took him on and ended up killing his father in battle. May Allah never bring a day when anybody else has to be in that position. Even if your parents are non-Muslims, as long as they don't force you to commit shirk, you still have to give them the utmost respect. That's the masala. But this wasn't an ordinary situation, this was a battlefield. Abu Ubaidah had to end up fighting his father, and he ended up killing him. You can imagine, Allahu Akbar. You're not talking about a rebel child, who's looking for an opportunity to do something silly like that. You're talking about a man who has love of Allah and His Rasul and His commands and teachings, and he's had to do this in battlefield. He felt so bad. And then Allah revealed verses in Quran in honor of Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah. لا تجد قوما يؤمنون بالله واليوم الآخر يوادون من حاد الله ورسوله ولو كانوا آباءهم. You won't find people who believe in Allah and the last day. They have sympathy for those who are opposed to Allah and His Rasul, even though they might be their parents. Allah liked what Abu Ubaidah did so much. Allah made it part of Quran. This was the ultimate test for Abu Ubaidah. He was from Banu Haris. When Umar radiallahu anhu was eventually stabbed, and he wanted to appoint his successor, he said, I wish Abu Ubaidah had been alive today, I would have made him my successor. In my little knowledge, I've only come across 2 people who could look into the eye of Umar and say something and tell Umar off for what he was. One was Abu Bakr and the other was Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah. Not that he wanted to argue with him, but Umar radiallahu anhu had similar respect, so much respect for Abu Ubaidah. When the plague of Amwas set in, this was like a COVID in the time of Umar radiallahu anhu. Umar radiallahu anhu went specially to Sham to request Abu Ubaidah to come with him to Medina. But Abu Ubaidah said, no, I'm not leaving my friends. So he was from Banu Haris. So Banu Hashim, Banu Umayyah, Banu Asad, Banu Bakr, Banu Taym, Banu Adi. There was one other clan, and they were known as Banu Makhzum. and that was the clan of Abu Jahl. Abu Jahl's real name was Amr bin Hisham. Amr bin Hisham. Hisham had a couple of brothers. One was Harith, one was Waleed. Abu Jahl's father, Hisham. And Hisham's father, he was Mughira bin Abdullah bin Umar bin Makhzum. So his descendants were known as Banu Makhzum. So Abu Jahl, he was part of Banu Makhzum. And Banu Makhzum were like probably the most powerful clan in Makkah. They were like the leaders, the diplomats, and the army generals and so on. So in Badr, when the Makkans came to fight Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who was the commander of the Makkans? Abu Jahl. So Abu Jahl, his father was Hisham. Hisham's brother Waleed. Waleed had a son, his name was Khalid. So Khalid was the first cousin of Abu Jahl. Not only that, Abu Jahl, Amr bin Hisham, he had a sister. His sister's name was Hantama. Hantama binti Hisham. And Hantama was the mother of Umar ibn al-Khattab. So Abu Jahl is the real mama of Umar radiallahu anhu. Real mama of Umar radiallahu anhu, and Abu Jahl and Khalid bin Waleed are first cousins. They had another cousin. It was a female cousin. Her name was Salma. Her real name was Hind bint Suhail. But she was known as Salma. And Salma eventually became one of the wives of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Suhail and Hisham and Waleed were brothers from Banu Makhzum. So Salma, wife of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, is first cousin of Khalid bin Waleed. Khalid bin Waleed is mama of Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. So he wasn't unknown to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. You know, there was another woman in Makkah at the time, and she was known as the grandest mother-in-law of all. Sabse badi saas. You know saas? Is that what you say in Gujarati? Huh? Sasu. Mother-in-law, huh? Your wife, your daughter's, your wife's mother. Now this woman, Hind bint Auf, her name was. Allah, what a mother-in-law she was. One of her son-in-laws was Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Another one of her son-in-laws was Abu Bakr. Another of her son-in-law was Ali. Another of her son-in-laws was Hamza. Another one of her son-in-laws was Abbas, Rasulullah's uncle. So can you imagine? Allahu Akbar. One of her daughters became known as Maimuna radiallahu anha, one of the wives of Rasulullah. Maimuna was the daughter of this woman, Maimuna bint Haris. She married 4 times, Hind bint Auf. Married 4 times from different men, she had different children. So Maimuna radiallahu anha, she was her child. And Maimuna's sister was the wife of Abbas radiallahu anhu. And one of his daughters, her name was Asma bint Umais. She was initially married to Jafir radiallahu anhu, Ali's elder brother. When he was martyred in the Battle of Muta, and Battle of Muta is where Khalid radiallahu anhu appears on the scene. And he was martyred in the Battle of Muta. So when he was martyred, then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, after the lapse of her iddat, offered to marry her. So, yeah. And then after Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu died, Hazrat Ali married the same woman. So Asma bint Umais' mother was married 4 times, and Asma bint Umais herself married 3 times. And so that was one. Another one of her daughters was Salma, and she married as Hamza radiallahu anhu. And another of her daughters was Fazl, who was the wife of Abbas radiallahu anhu. And another one of her daughters, she was married to Khalid bin Waleed's father. Khalid bin Waleed's father had a number of wives as well. And she was also, so Khalid bin Waleed's father, Waleed bin Mughira, he was like brother-in-law of Rasulullah in relationship. They were married to their sisters. Allahu Akbar. So although there were different families, but they all had relationship with one another. Multiple relationships. You know why? Because they had multiple wives. And so in Makkah, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam had relationship with almost everybody. If he had relationship with Abu Jahl, you can imagine the rest. Or with Umar radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah, Hazrat Umar's daughter, you know what her name was? Hafsa. She was one of the wives of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But Umar radiallahu anhu, and he was also married Qurayba, who was one of the sisters of Salma. So I think in Gujarati as well, in Punjabi we say Sandubai. What do you say in Gujarati? I think yes, Sandubai. Yeah? So Umar radiallahu anhu was also Sandubai of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Allahu Akbar. And because they had everybody, mashallah, they got along. Quraysh wasn't a very big tribe. Perhaps only a couple of thousand. And how we know that? Because in the Battle of Badr, how many people came from Makkah to fight the Muslims? 1,000. So 1,000 males. So say let's suppose that even a third only came, then how many males does that make? 3,000 maximum. But that wasn't the case. Because every family only had 50, 60 families. And there were about 10 families in Makkah. So there were probably 500-600 homes or houses in Makkah at the time. So when you have such a closed community, everybody knows everybody. So Khalid ibn Waleed radiallahu anhu, and when he was growing up in Makkah, he knew Rasulullah sallallahu. Everybody knew everybody in Makkatul Mukarramah. It's not like you living in Preston. It's like you living in this area. Everybody knows almost everybody, yes? This is what Makkah was like in the time of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And in fact, after Khadija, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was the first man to accept Islam. Hazrat Ali was the first child. The first woman was Khadija radiallahu anha. You heard that, yeah? The second woman to probably accept Islam was Salma. And she was cousin of Khalid bin Waleed. And so how everything, mashallah. As Abu Jahl, he was from Banu Makhzum, but he was number one enemy of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But there were other members around his family who had accepted Islam and who knew Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So Khalid radiallahu anhu grew up in that environment. He is the mama of Hazrat Umar. Hazrat Umar's name, mother's name, Hantama bint Hisham, real sister of Abu Jahl. So Khalid radiallahu anhu is the first cousin of Abu Jahl, Banu Makhzum. And because of Abu Jahl, you can imagine his stand against Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam right from the beginning. So while others were accepting Islam, Khalid was keeping his distance. Until Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam then started preaching, he left Makkah, made hijrat, came to Medina, Battle of Badr took place. In Battle of Badr, Abu Jahl came, others came, but Khalid, you won't hear the name of Khalid in Battle of Badr because he wasn't in Makkah at the time. Battle of Badr took place very sudden circumstances. It wasn't really planned as such. And so anybody who was there took part. And Khalid wasn't just in Makkah at the time, so he didn't come. But when the Makkans suffered defeat and many of their elders were killed, including Abu Jahl, Khalid bin Waleed's cousin, you can imagine how much hatred and anger was brewing within him. So 1 year later, when the Battle of Uhud took place, Khalid was there to seek revenge. And you probably heard the story of what happened. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam got injured, 70 Sahaba were martyred, including Hamza radiallahu anhu. More time lapsed. And in the meantime, one of Khalid's brothers became a Muslim as well. His name was Waleed as well. Waleed bin Waleed, Khalid's brother. But Khalid was keeping distance. Battle of Khandaq took place. That came and went. Then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had a dream. And that dream is mentioned in Quran, Surah Fath. And after which Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he proceeded to perform Umrah in Makkah. And the Makkans didn't like it. That Muslims just coming, 6 years had passed. Since Rasulullah made hijrat from Makkah to Medina, he hadn't been able to go back. People of Medina used to go to Makkah to perform Umrah. They hadn't been for 6 years. The ones who'd come from Makkah, made hijrat, they hadn't been back. They all loved Makkah so much. In fact, when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam left Makkah the night of hijrat, he looked back with tears in his eyes and he said, "Oh Makkah, I would have never left you. But what can I do? Your people don't let me stay here. I've got no choice but to leave." So Rasulullah hadn't been back for 6 years. So when he saw this dream, everybody became ready. 1400 Sahaba became ready. The Makkans heard that Rasulullah is coming with 1400 Sahaba to perform Umrah. So they sent Khalid to intercept them. And Khalid came with a few hundred men. And there was a point en route from Makkah to Medina where they passed through a gorge, like a valley with mountains on both sides. And Khalid said, right, this is the best place to ambush them. Because once they reach here, there's no way anyone's leaving this place alive. He put up archers on both sides, just waiting for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to come through and then pounce on them. But Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was Rasulullah. Allah had promised to save Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam and help him in every way. So Allah sent Jibreel, you better go and tell my beloved Prophet, he should not go this way. He's got to go round. And so Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, instead of going through the shortest common route, he went around the mountainous range, long way but safe way, and he reached Hudaybiyah. So when Khalid is still waiting, he heard Rasulullah has already reached Hudaybiyah. He was taken back. How is that possible? Something struck him, that this man isn't an ordinary man. Nobody would think, nobody would know. How did he know? Rasulullah went there, negotiation, 10 years of peace was signed, treaty was signed. And Rasulullah offered the Makkans, look, we've had enough battles. You've lost all your big men. I'm willing to make peace with you. Because until now, Rasulullah started preaching at the age of 40. 13 years in Makkah, 6 more years in Medina. So how many years is that? 19 plus 40? 59 almost, huh? How many years got left? He's only got 4 years left. We don't know if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was aware he's only got 44 years left. But from history now, we know so many years had lapsed. And he isn't just sent for the Quraysh and the people of Medina. He's been sent for the whole of mankind. But until now, he hasn't been able to turn to anybody else. And he was now almost 60 years old. So he was saying, he offered the Makkans, look, you've lost so many men, and I'm constantly having to deal with you, but it's broken your back. But if you want, I'll make peace with you. 10 years, let's agree 10 years peace, so I can deal with other people. So they agreed 10 years peace. And Khalid, while others were there, he didn't want to face Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He stayed away again. When he stayed away, Rasulullah was watching, everyone was coming and going. Khalid's brother was still there. So Rasulullah asked his brother, Waleed, where is Khalid? I don't see Khalid anywhere. What's keeping him away? How can a man like Khalid, so sensible, intelligent, what's keeping him away from this goodness? But if Khalid was to come to us, we'll really appreciate him and value him and give him the honor he deserves. And look at who Khalid is. He's responsible for causing hurt and harm to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the battle of Uhud and causing the shahadat of Hazrat Hamza. But Rasulullah said, man, if Khalid was to come to us, we'll honor him. We'll give him the respect and appreciation that he deserves. So his brother got hold of Khalid. And he said to him, Khalid is amazing. You don't even want to face Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Rasulullah holds you in such high esteem. He's got so much respect for you. And this melted Khalid's heart. Look, there's me. I don't even want to face the man. And he looks he's got so much respect for me. Who am I? Allah showed Khalid a dream that he was in a very dark and tight spot. And all of a sudden, he found himself in a green, open, large space, and so wonderful. So he put 2 and 2 together. He said, enough is enough. It's time's come for me now to accept the truth. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam returned to Medina, and a few days later, Rasulullah was sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi, and Rasulullah said, Makkah has given up its liver. Meaning, Khalid, and there was another man like Khalid, his name was Amr ibn As. They were good friends. They later on both became prominent commanders in Islamic armies. Khalid and Amr ibn As radiallahu anhu, they both felt, now time is right for us now to give up kufr and become Muslim. So they left their homes. Khalid is from Banu Makhzum, Amr ibn As is from Banu Umayyah. So they left their homes to come to Medina. And when they got to the main road which goes to Medina, they got there almost same time. There was another man as well, Usman bin Talha radiallahu anhu. So Khalid said, "Oh, where are you going?" He said, "Where are you going?" Medina. Me too. And so they left to go to Medina to become Muslim, and Rasulullah was sitting in Masjid Nabwi, and Rasulullah said to the people, "That's it, Makkah has given up its liver. Khalid and Amr ibn As are coming to accept Islam." So they came. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he was always looking for opportunities. He thought like Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allah in Quran refers to Abu Bakr as Thani Yasnain, second of the two, as though Abu Bakr is a pair with the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's not Rasulullah, he's not a Nabi. But his personality, his character, his thoughts, his everything is just like Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So when Rasulullah said Khalid's coming, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu wanted to welcome them, to give Rasulullah that news, so that Rasulullah would be extra happy with him. He went and waited outside. Khalid came. There was a man running down. He saw Khalid first. So he was coming to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam to tell Rasulullah the news. So Abu Bakr stopped him. "Where are you going?" "Oh, you know Khalid's coming." "Oh, really? Where are you going?" "I'm going to tell Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam." Abu Bakr said, "Well, take it easy. Inshallah. Allow me to go and tell Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam." So Khalid came. Rasulullah accepted their Islam. Khalid stayed in Medina for a few months. In the meantime, just before this, Rasulullah had sent, he hadn't had an opportunity to deal with anybody yet. Rasulullah was dealing with Arabs, Quraysh until now. So when they signed the peace treaty, Rasulullah straight away sent a letter to the Roman Emperor, Heraclius, Egyptian king Muqawqis, Persian king. The Roman king had come to Jerusalem to pay respect, to fulfill a vow. Because he had battles with the Persians, he lost, and then he made a vow with Allah. Nazar, if you give me victory, I'll make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Allah gave him a victory, so he came to fulfill his vow. Rasulullah heard he's come to Jerusalem. Jerusalem was very near, and Constantinople was far. So Rasulullah, on hearing this, sent a letter inviting Heraclius to come to Islam. Rasulullah sent a letter to the Egyptian king. He showed respect, and he sent back a present for Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a maid servant, Maria Qibtiyah. The Persian emperor, when Rasulullah sent a letter to him, what he did, he tore up Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's letter. And Rasulullah became into small pieces. Rasulullah, when he heard what he done, Rasulullah said, Allah will tear up his kingdom. There was another messenger Rasulullah sent to a man, Banu Ghassan. Banu Ghassan were Christian Arabs. They lived in the border of Sham. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam sent a messenger to him, but instead of showing at least decency, courtesy to entertain any messenger, and it was considered wrong to hurt and insult messengers. You got a problem with the nation, you deal with the nation, not the messenger. So everybody all over used to give respect to the messengers. But this Ghassani, he was so arrogant, he killed the messenger of Rasulullah. Rasulullah became very angry. If he didn't want to accept, he didn't have to accept, but he shouldn't have hurt my messenger. In the meantime, Khalid radiallahu anhu became Muslim. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was so upset, he prepared an army to seek revenge for the killing of this messenger. Rasulullah prepared an army 3,000. And he appointed 3 amirs over them. Initially Zayd bin Harisa, and Rasulullah said, if he's killed, then Jafar should become the Amir. And Jafar radiallahu anhu was the elder brother of Hazrat Ali. He had accepted Islam in the beginning, but when Muslims migrated to Abyssinia, he went there. And when Rasulullah migrated to Medina, many Muslims, including Hazrat Usman and the likes, they came from Abyssinia to Medina, but Jafar stayed back for a number of years. And Jafar radiallahu anhu had just come back from Abyssinia. He was Rasulullah's cousin. Rasulullah loved him very much. He'd grown up with him. And so Rasulullah was very happy that Jafar has come back. But then this incident arose, so Rasulullah sent him in battle. And when Rasulullah sent him in battle, he said, if Zayd bin Harisa is martyred, Jafar should be Amir. And if he's martyred, then Abdullah bin Rawaha should be Amir. And if he gets martyred as well, then Muslims can decide whom they want to make Amir. So Rasulullah sent them off. They reached Muta, which is near where Banu Ghassan lived, and they faced the enemy. The enemies. Banu Ghassan were a large clan. Some Muslim historians have written that they prepared an army 200,000, but modern historians don't agree because it just wasn't possible in those days to have such large armies. But they had definitely a very large army which far outnumbered the Muslims. Muslims were only 3,000. So even if they were 15, 20,000, they were still very heavy odds against Muslims. So they lined up to fight each other. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi at the time when the battle was about to start. And Rasulullah gathered the companion and he said, come around, let me tell you what's happening. Allah put the whole battlefield in front of Rasulullah. So Rasulullah started describing what's happening. Zayd bin Harisa radiallahu anhu stepped forward. Now, Zayd bin Harisa was Rasulullah's adopted son. Rasulullah loved him very dearly. And he had a son, his name was Usama. And Rasulullah used to love Usama as well, like his own son. And so, he was someone very close to Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So he then started fighting. He was the Amir, but he became Shaheed. Then Jafar radiallahu anhu, and a symbol of the leader was he used to hold the flag in his hand. So everybody knew who the leader is. So Jafar radiallahu anhu then held on to the flag and he was holding it in his right hand, so the enemies chopped off his right arm. So immediately got hold of it in his left hand, and so they cut off his left hand. He got hold of it like this. Then he got stabbed and he was martyred. Rasulullah was sitting in Masjid al-Nabawi. He said, Jafar's hands have been cut off and he's died, and Allah has admitted into paradise, and Allah has replaced his arms with wings. So Jafar is flying in paradise. So he became known as Jafar Tayyar, Jafar the flyer, because Rasulullah said Allah has replaced his arms with wings, so he's flying in paradise. So after Jafar, Abdullah bin Rawaha took the flag and he was martyred as well. And then when actual battlefield, when the Muslims were fighting, your first leader has been martyred, second has been gone, third is martyred as well. There's total chaos. You far outnumbered. You're only 3,000, they are 15, 20, 30,000. So you can imagine the chaos in the battlefield. And nobody knows where to turn and who to now give the flag to. Some people just saw Khalid. Khalid, please take the flag, you are the man now. So Khalid didn't want, he's just been Muslim 3 months. And he took the flag, and Rasulullah sitting here in Masjid al-Nabawi, Rasulullah said, now the flag's been taken by a sword from the swords of Allah. And the moment Rasulullah said that, Allahu Akbar, the whole battlefield scenario just changed. Khalid radiallahu anhu, on spur of the moment, was able to organize the Muslims. There was no way they were going to win. But Khalid was able to salvage the situation in such a way. To overpower such very heavy odds was going to be very difficult. But he was able to rescue the situation and save the Muslims from total massacre. Khalid, this is his first battle. As a Muslim, he fought against Rasulullah, Battle of Uhud, Battle of Khandaq, and others. He was there, but this was the first time he was fighting for Muslims as a Muslim. So he that day, Khalid radiallahu anhu said, when he got hold of the flag and started fighting, he fought in such a way he broke 9 swords. And swords were forged with special treatment, they weren't easy. And he fought such a way like he's never fought before in his life. And he was able to retreat and get the Muslims out of that lock in such a way that they managed to get back and save the day. When the night fell, they'd been fighting the whole day, and the Romans, or the Ghassanis, because they were Christians, they were under Roman authority, so they camped on one side. Khalid radiallahu anhu camped on one side, and he ordered the Muslims to light fires in front of their tents to show, the large number of Muslims. But he did, Allahu Akbar. Allah had given Khalid such a mind. Although he hadn't gone through any training, there was no military training. Nowadays, anybody who wants to become an officer in the army, he's got to go to special training to military colleges and get special training. Khalid didn't go to any college. And in the Arabs, although they used to have disputes and fights, but because Arabs were just small tribes, Quraysh was the biggest tribe and they were only a few thousand. So in their battles, they had no real experience of fighting proper international wars, as it were. They fought between the tribes, few hundred men here, few hundred men on either side. So it's like, your mom can make biryani for the family at home for 5-6 people, but to cook for a whole wedding, not every mother can do that. Huh? And so Khalid was used to fighting these local battles, but to fight the Romans now, this was his first battle. He hadn't got any training, no experience, no culture of warfare. But Khalid, radiallahu anhu, spur of the moment, Allah inspired him. And at night, what he did was, although many had become martyrs, but the remaining, he kept a large portion in the front and 3-4 small groups. In the darkness of the night, he gave them flags and he sent them back. And he said, tomorrow morning, when we are ready to fight, 3-4, one group at a time should walk in, should march in, gallantly, as though to give the impression it's a new enforcement. And so when after sunrise they're ready to fight each other, Muslims are there, and they saw, the people they were fighting yesterday. Just as things were happening, an army marches in, takes up positions. They say, where did they come from? 5 minutes later, another army is coming in. Half an hour later, another army is coming in. And so when the Romans saw Muslims, they've got reinforcements now, and these small group, they gave us tough time yesterday, and now they've got reinforcements. It's going to be a big day ahead of us. So Romans did not have the courage to launch an offensive. So Khalid radiallahu anhu, seeing that they were hesitant, was then able to retreat and just turn back and save all these guys and bring them home safely. Other people saw Khalid's come back defeated. In Arab culture, to run from battlefield is the worst thing you can do. So they started, Khalid, you ran from battlefield? Rasulullah, when he heard this, Rasulullah said, Khalid didn't run. He's come back to go again. And did he go again? To this day, the greatest conflicts of Muslims have been with Christians. They started at the Battle of Mu'tah, and even now, the main conflict between Muslims and non-Muslims is with Christians. What's happening in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in other places? Salahuddin had to fight who? The Romans. And then Khalid radiallahu anhu, after this, many battles he fought against the Romans. And one of his memorable, decisive, historical battle, his final battle in command, was against Christians, the Battle of Yarmouk. But anyway, when he came back to Medina, Rasulullah greeted him, welcomed him so happily, kissed his forehead. And the fact that he had saved the Muslims from massacre, Rasulullah was so happy with that. Soon after that, the Meccans broke the treaty, so Rasulullah had to march into Mecca to take Mecca. Rasulullah organized the Islamic army in 3-4 groups. Rasulullah led one group himself and he gave one to Khalid. And then after Mecca fell, Rasulullah went to Hunain. The battle is mentioned in Quran. In the battle of Hunain, the enemies they held positions on the ridges. The Muslims were in the valley. So again they started throwing arrows and things, and Muslims were, they were in a way state of fleeing. Khalid radiallahu anhu was at the front, and he suffered in such a way he became unconscious. People thought that's the end of Khalid. Then Rasulullah was informed. Rasulullah came. Rasulullah did some dam, like ruqya, read upon him, blew upon him. Khalid gained consciousness. Rasulullah said, Khalid, you want to go and rest in the tent, or you want to accompany us? No, Ya Rasulullah, I'm not going to rest. I'll accompany you. Then Rasulullah came back to Medina. Then Rasulullah wanted to send someone to Yemen. Rasulullah had a very soft spot for Yemen. Rasulullah said, Al-Imanu Yamani wal-Hikmatu Yamaniya. Iman is for the people of Yemen, and so is wisdom. Iman is made in Yemen. Wa ana Yamani. Rasulullah said, I am Yemeni. Because Ismail alayhi salam's mother, his wife was from the people of Yemen. So Rasulullah made reference to the people of Yemen as that he's their descendant. And Rasulullah had so much love for the people of Yemen. It's sad now that probably the richest Muslim country is fighting the poorest Muslim country. And Allahu Akbar, blowing the living daylights out of Yemen, when Rasulullah had so much love for Yemen. Rasulullah sent Khalid to Yemen, and he spent some time, he came back. And then when Rasulullah passed away, other people like Musaylima Kadhab declared nubuwwat. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu became Khalifa. He felt the danger, so he spread Muslims out. And when Rasulullah passed away, the Roman emperor heard Rasulullah's passed away. He said, right, this is the best time to attack Medina in a surprise attack and just end Islam. So he wanted to send an army. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu organized Muslim armies in such a way, sent armies everywhere, small groups, telling people, pray Dhuhr there, Asr there, Maghrib there. They had spies all around. And then he sent some armies in that direction as well. So the Roman spy said, we saw a Muslim group in the morning in that town. There was another group in that town at afternoon. In the evening, another town there. And it was the same group. They were praying Zohar, prayed in different towns. They thought the Muslim armies everywhere. So then he abandoned his plan. And then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he sent 11 armies to deal with these false prophets. And he put Khalid in charge. He dealt with the people. And killed Musaylima Kadhab and other false claimants. In the meantime, 1100 Sahaba were roughly martyred in these campaigns. He had given Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu Are you okay? Yeah? Can you carry on? Inshallah, hopefully I won't be too long, inshallah. Our Muslims had lost about 1100 men. And this was the first time the Arabs had been this campaign took many months. Previously, Arabs used to fight 1 hour, 2 hours. You came in for the battle, you did your part, and then either you lost or you won and you went home. Sahaba had now been away from home for many months. First time it's ever happened to them like that. Everybody was homesick. So when Musaylima Kadhab was dealt with and the whole issue, everything was brought under control, there was a need. Now the Persians who were in the northeast, they were causing, where Iraq is now, they was causing problems, helping rebels to turn against Muslims. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu realized that he has to deal with the Persians. He's got to do something about them. So he said to Khalid, you must go towards Iraq. Khalid can see all his army is tired. They've been away from home like never before. So he sent a letter, Abu Bakr, Khalifa to Rasulullah, I've got this problem. So he goes, no problem, tell people, ask them who wants to go, who wants to stay. So he said, anybody want to go home? You homesick, you can go home. Anybody want to carry on? We going to Iraq. Most people said, Alhamdulillah, Allah accept what we've done. Like the Tablighi brothers, when they go back after Chilla, they go to Markaz. And now Hafiz Sahab, may Allah bless him, may Allah enlighten his grave. And he's passed, how many of you know Hafiz Patel Sahab, you remember him? Anybody came from Chilla, you go back to Dewsbury, Hafsa would say, MashaAllah, you come back, who's ready to extend his time? Many people would say, Hafsa, we've just come back from Chilla, please. Inshallah, we'll come for the next Chilla. But Hafsa would try his best. At least 10 days, come on. You got to do that noor, the barakat. Now you've learnt. Now you got to go and do some work. Before you go home, do another 10 days. So Khalid radiallahu anhu did something similar. He goes, now we've done what we've done, Allah accept, but we got to go Iraq. Abu Bakr says, we got to go Iraq. They say, inshallah, we'll go, but now, we got to see what's happening back home as well. So most went back. So Khalid sent a letter to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Everyone, most of the people have gone home. I've hardly got anybody left. Abu Bakr had no one in Medina to offer as a replacement. A man came to Medina. He said, I want to fight in the path of Allah. Abu Bakr looked at him. What's your name? He says, Qaqa. Abu Bakr said, okay, you want to go? Khalid's going to Iraq, go and join him. And then he said, a man like you, if there's a man like you in any army, that army can't be defeated. Allah had given Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu such wisdom. He could see a man and he could x-ray him. So he sent him off to Khalid. So when he joined Khalid, he said, Abu Bakr sent me to join you. Said, Abu Bakr sent you to join me? Just you? He goes, I've lost so many thousands of men and he sent you? He goes, yeah, he sent me. He goes, I've lost 5,000, 6,000 men and he sent you? He said, Kaka said, I'm not claiming that I'm equal to the 5,000 or 6,000 or 3,000 who left you, but inshallah, I will never disappoint you. He goes, all right, I've heard that one before. So he took him on, started proceeding towards Iraq en route. Then Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was eventually able to give him more reinforcements, and he had acquired a decent army. He got to Iraq, and now this was his first confrontation with the Persians. Allahu Akbar. Allah gave Khalid radiallahu anhu that wisdom. He didn't go to any military college, but he knew, in spite of the fact he never had even experience of fighting big wars. But the day Rasulullah gave him that title, Sayfun min Suyufillah, that's the day everything changed about Khalid. There was other Sahabi, Rasulullah gave him the title, Lion of Allah. You know? But there's a difference. Hamza radiallahu and Ali radiallahu anhu, lions of Allah. And what's a lion? Lion strong, fearless, brave. Lion is king of the jungle, but lion can be hunted and killed. So Hamza radiallahu anhu was eventually, he was very brave. He used to fight very bravely, killed a lot of people in battle, but eventually he tasted of shahadat. Similarly, Ali radiallahu, very strong, brave, but eventually he was also martyred. Being a lion doesn't, it shows you, mashallah, as good as can be. Strong, fearless, brave. But being sword of Allah was another thing altogether. Being sword of Allah meant, sword is a symbol of supremacy, sovereignty, greatness. And Rasulullah didn't say that Khalid is just a sword. He is sword of Allah, meaning no one was ever going to break Khalid. So eventually when Khalid radiallahu anhu passed away, after the plague of Amwas, after a lot happened, he fought many battles. He fought over 100 battles and skirmishes. And a measure of the greatness of a man is, how he's ranked in what group. Many of you probably follow football, huh? Heard of a guy called Mo Salah? Huh? A couple of seasons ago, he had a very good season. And people were comparing him. And that particular, I think 2-3 seasons ago, Messi and Ronaldo didn't have a very good season. And Muhammad Salah, and astaghfirullah, may Allah forgive me, he never say Mo Salah, he is Muhammad, Rasulullah's name. So he should be taken with respect. Muhammad Salah. And that year he had a very good season. So people were saying, who's better, and that cream, Ronaldo, Messi, and Muhammad Salah, and Salah. So he was being compared in that group. So for him, just to be compared in that group, it was something special, that he's top of the game. He's on top of the league. So when people discuss history, they discuss some of the top generals in the world. They discuss names like Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, Hannibal. You probably heard of Julius Caesar. How many have heard of Hannibal? Who was he? No, he was a leader, but not German. He was a leader in very ancient times, from a place called Carthage. Carthage is where modern Tunisia is now. And he gave Rome hell. Rome in their heydays. He's one of the few generals to actually show the Roman stars during the day. There was a time he almost took Rome. And he defeated the Romans, and if he wanted, he could have taken Rome, but he didn't know Rome was empty at the time. And so he gave the Romans nightmares, but eventually he also lost his battle. So they consider him one of the greatest tacticians in military affair. Nowadays, battles are not like what they used to be. I don't know, some of the youngsters probably won't even know, won't even heard, but those who are middle-aged and elderly, in the 1990s, when the Americans first attacked Kuwait, when Saddam Hussein marched into Kuwait, they sent an army, Americans, and their general was Norman Schwarzkopf. He was called the Bear, and he had a very good reputation for being a mighty general. But he conducted the operations from his room in a closed compound. He didn't even get to see the battlefield. And people like in the olden days used to actually fight on the battlefield. And even other generals didn't used to fight in front, they used to stay at the back and direct operations, whereas Khalid radiallahu anhu would be the first one to fight, challenge the enemy and take him on. So Khalid radiallahu anhu, when people discuss about the great generals, and when you read history, one of the things, the most obvious things people study, if those who've been to school and you studied Romans, what did you study about Romans? What food they eat? What clothes they wear? You study about the battles they fought. Whenever you read any history, when you read about the Vikings, the Romans, and the others, I don't know how many of you were watching Ertugrul, Usman, what's the main thing they show? His battles and fights. So they've been part and parcel of history throughout history. And it's the battles which have shaped and saved nations and societies and cultures. So throughout human history, battles have been the main. People have forgotten how they used to live and eat and do other things, but the things which have been remembered are the battles people fought. And other battles like Napoleon, these people, they are considered amongst the greatest generals in what the Western society considers great generals. And among there, they mention the name of Khalid. And Hannibal was a great general, but eventually he suffered defeat and he had to retire in humiliation. Julius Caesar was eventually killed. Napoleon, he suffered a defeat. He took on Russia, but he lost it. He fought many battles, but he lost a few. But in one expedition, when he marched towards Russia, he took an army over 500,000, 600,000, and he lost almost 500,000 men in just one campaign. But he is considered one of the great generals. So Khalid radiallahu anhu is that mix. And unlike them, Alexander the Great only fought about 9-10 battles. And he didn't face great opposition. Khalid radiallahu anhu fought over 40 major battles and over 100 duels, as well as being in the front line all the time. And he never lost a battle. When he was dying, eventually, and one of his friends came to visit him, he showed him his arms, his legs, his chest, and he said, "Do you see any place in my body where there isn't a scar of a wound?" And the man looked and he said, "Whoa, man, I've never seen such a body." There were scars all over, but Khalid, he didn't die on the battlefield, he was dying on his bed. Reason being, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam had given him the title Sayfun min Suyufillah, and no one was ever going to kill him, no matter how strong and how powerful and how good. Khalid was always going to get the better of everyone simply because he was the sword of Allah. He wasn't just an ordinary sword, he was the sword of Allah. So Khalid learned to fight battles in spite of the fact he didn't have any training. And one of the things, I'll very briefly discuss his tactics very briefly, just to give you how he had evolved, because Rasulullah gave him the title. One of the things he used to do was, he used to tire the enemy out before engaging them, whenever possible. So he says his first battle with the Persians, and they've got a proper army, and Khalid has just been fighting many months. His men are tired mostly. They've got no experience of fighting the Persians. They've got shields and swords and everything and armor. And Khalid is just, his men just got a sword and a shield and no armor probably and simple things. So Khalid radiallahu anhu, instead of confronting them where they were waiting for him, he went behind them to where their headquarters was. So when the Persians heard Khalid's done a bypass, so they rushed back. So when they rushed back, they were heavily armored. So by the time they got back, it was too much for them. And Khalid didn't camp, he rushed back. So when he rushed back, they realized Khalid's already gone the other way. So we got to face him before he takes that town. So by the time they got there, Khalid, he was light. They could run, but they could barely crawl. So by now, 3 days of marching up and down, they were tired. When they faced each other, Khalid said, let's not wait and anymore, let's take him on. They've just got there, they're absolutely exhausted, and before they realize what hits them, Khalid's facing them with an army to fight. And their commander, as was the culture tradition, they would start a fight with a personal duel. Khalid said, come, bring your man, top man. So the top man came, but he knew he couldn't, he had heard Khalid's reputation. So he knew he wasn't going to be able to take Khalid. So he devised a crafty plan. He said they were going to start in the middle, and he was going to go back and back and back. And he said, by the time I come near, a group of you must rush in and grab him, surround him and grab him. And he might be able to fight me, but he won't be able to get away from when you surround him. So when they started fighting, he started going back, slowly fighting. And when they were almost near their main army and there was a danger, Khalid is going to get surrounded. Qaqa, remember Qaqa? Who said, I'm not saying I'm equivalent to 5,000, but I won't let you down. He saw what's happening and he shot forth like an arrow. And before the Persians knew what was happening, he's chopped half to them and Khalid had done the rest. He got him on his horse and brought him back. So remember I told you I'm not going to disappoint you. And then the battle started, the Persians were already exhausted, and then the Muslims just chopped them up. Another tactic Khalid learned was to take the enemy by surprise. When you come in the battlefield, the one who's going to get the first shot is probably going to get the better of his enemies. And the Persians, after this initial defeat, when they realized Muslims, so they were going to send reinforcements in different batches. Khalid radiallahu anhu, he learned to send spies and get information about the enemy. So his spies informed him the Persians are getting together and forming a large army so he said, I can't allow them to regroup and unite. So we've got to take them on individually. So his spies, that group will be spending the night there, that group will be there, that group will be there. So one night at a time, when they had been traveling, sleeping at night, Khalid got them. Before they knew it'd been on them, they were sleeping and he wiped out 3 whole armies. Just element of surprise. Another tactic Khalid radiallahu anh used to execute to perfection, he used to fake retreat. Because Muslims were almost always outnumbered, and he would assign light cavalry units, 500-600 on sides, hide them behind mountains. His main group fighting at the front, faking retreat. They would start off fighting. If they didn't get the upper hand, they would come back, lure the army in. And when the army was away and in, then he would give the signal and the cavalry would come in from both sides and the enemy would be surrounded and they would chop them up like carrots. He fought many battles in Persia. And it had been almost 2 years now. He had left Medina after Rasulullah passed away. The Romans, this is in Iraq, the Persians, the Romans then decided they were going to attack the Muslims because Muslims are fighting over there. They can't open 2 battlefronts. They haven't got the manpower. So the Romans decided they were going to attack the Muslims. Abu Bakr radiallahu anh heard the news. So he sent whatever he could reinforcements to Sham directly with Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah, Amr ibn As and others, and he sent a letter to Khalid. Khalid, you must rush straight to Sham. Khalid had just before 10-12 battles inflicting severe defeats on the Persians, broken their back. He left the job almost 3/4 done, but not finished it off. But Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said, you must rush straight to Sham. If Khalid takes the normal route, it's going to take months. And Muslims found themselves in problem in Sham. The Romans had come with large armies. Muslims were only a few thousand. They needed immediate reinforcement. The shortcut was through a desert. And it was summer. And going through a desert in summer is madness. But Khalid, even Muslim historians have written, but even amazes Western historians how Khalid achieved that. How did he take that shortcut? Nobody could imagine in the right frame of mind that this is how you're going to get to Sham. in a few days. Months journey, the usual long route. But shortcut is only 5 days. But you might not make it in those 5 days. So Khalid radiallahu anhu got his army and he got many camels. Camel is a special animal. It drinks water. And when he's thirsty, it goes straight to the stomach. But Allah has put a special tank, like a reserve. So the camel, what it does, stores water in that tank and it stays fresh. It doesn't get that those smell and gases and so on. It stores it in the tank. So Khalid got as many camels as he could, had them drink water, and then in the name of Allah, he said, we're taking the shortcut. And Allahu Akbar, the water they had finished, then the camels, they would slaughter them, take their water, and before the enemy knew, Khalid was on top of them. I say, it's absolutely amazing how Khalid took on that journey and got there. Nobody else could have taken on that journey. And then in quick succession, he was able to intercept the Romans, and then finally, and then he laid a siege around Damascus. Damascus is one of the oldest cities in his 8,000 years, they say roughly. And he laid a siege, and eventually they captured Damascus. And while they were in that siege, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu passed away. Khalid radiallahu anhu had been very close to Abu Bakr. And Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, he knew Khalid is the man. So he had the utmost respect for him because Rasulullah gave Khalid the title Sayfullah. So he said, if Rasulullah has taken a sword out of the casing, I'm not going to put it back. And Khalid radiallahu anhu was very close to Abu Bakr. But Abu Bakr in that time passed away. Umar radiallahu anhu became Khalifa. And one of the first things Umar radiallahu anhu did was he sent a letter saying to Abu Ubaidah that you take over the command and let Khalid become a commander under you. Abu Bakr had made Khalid in charge. Umar radiallahu anhu made Abu Ubaidah in charge over him. So when the letter got there, Muslims were busy in the siege of Damascus. So Abu Ubaidah, he kept the letter to himself. He didn't reveal it to Khalid because they were in a very difficult campaign. And if he tells him, Khalid, that's it, you are no longer commander, it might cause havoc in the army. So he kept it. And when Muslims captured Damascus, Khalid radiallahu anhu, at the end of every campaign, he would write Karguzari and send it to Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So after the conquest of Damascus, he sat down to write, thank Allah, and write to Abu Bakr what had happened and how they had captured Damascus. So Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu was sitting next to him. Because Khalid knew Abu Ubaidah is a special man, Rasul had so much favor. Rasul has mentioned him especially with the name, the man of Jannah, the most trustworthy man in the Ummah. Rasul had special love for him. In the battle of Uhud, when Rasulullah suffered as well, Rasulullah fell in a ditch. And in that process, his helmet had nails, got stuck in his cheeks. So if you pull the helmet off, it's going to cause a lot of pain and damage. So they needed someone to pull the nails out first so that it causes less pain and damage. And they didn't have any special tools. So Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu pulled the nails out with his teeth. But in the process, he lost his front teeth. And so someone, when you try to speak and you haven't got front teeth, you know how they look? It's not a very pleasant sight, they look a bit not normal. But because Abu Ubaidah had lost those teeth in love of Rasulullah, Allah gave him such an awesome appearance that normally a person without teeth, when he smiles, he can't even smile. But Abu Ubaidah, when he would smile, as though he would have extra noor on his face. So Khalid knew Rasulullah loved Abu Ubaidah very much. So he had so much respect for him. And Abu Ubaidah knew Khalid, Rasulullah has made him sword of Allah. Abu Bakr is important. So there's no way I'm going to exert my influence over Khalid. So he let him write. And then when he'd written his letter and he wanted to dispatch it back to Medina, Abu Ubaidah with tears in his eyes, he said to Khalid, Abu Bakr has passed away. And Umar has replaced him. And who is Umar? Khalid's nephew, remember? Khalid's cousin Hantama is his real first cousin is his mother. So Umar is the nephew, Khalid is the uncle, and Umar has replaced Khalid, his nephew, with Abu Ubaidah. Ulama say it's not because he disliked Khalid. It's just that Umar radiallahu anhu had so much extra regard for the people Rasulullah had a lot of regard for. And it's not that Khalid wasn't important, he was important. But Rasulullah loved Abu Ubaidah more. He was one of the men. And so Umar, he was never going to give anybody preference over the Ashra Mubashara. That was his main. It wasn't that he looked down upon Khalid, no. He knew Khalid is special because Abu Ubaidah was Abu Ubaidah. He was Abu Bakr can do it, but he wasn't going to give anyone preference over Abu Ubaidah. That was one reason. Second reason was that everybody was thinking, oh, Khalid's okay, as long as Khalid's there, that's it, we are guaranteed victory. So Umar radiallahu anhu wanted to teach the people, no, Khalid is Saifullah. But without Allah, he's nothing. Rasulullah gave him that title. Khalid is what he is because of Allah and his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam. It's not that if Khalid is there, you will get victory. No, you'll get victory if Allah gives victory. He wanted to teach people that. Many Western historians says Umar replaced him because he feared mutiny. Oh, Khalid is becoming so popular that if he lets him be, he's going to take over. No, Khalid wasn't. He wasn't going to even raise an eyebrow in front of Umar, although Umar was his nephew, because he knew. And when eventually, in another incident, Maulana Shibli Nomani in Al-Faruq, is a biographer, Umar, he's mentioned the fact when Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu demoted Khalid from the post of commander-in-chief, made Abu Ubaidah the commander-in-chief. Khalid was sitting. He was disappointed. He took it on the chin, like they say, but he was disappointed. Being a man, human, these are our feelings. But he said to one of his close friends, when the Muslims needed me, they put me in charge and command to fight the enemy and defeat them and conquer the lands. And when I conquered the lands and defeated the enemies, they've got rid of me. So somebody said, Khalid, you shouldn't talk like that. This is causing fitna. Okay, you did it for the sake of Allah. What happened has happened, but you shouldn't be talking like this is causing fitna. So, Khalid could have said, well, can't you see that's what they've done to me? What's fitna about this? But Maulana Shibli Nomani in Al-Faruq has said, Khalid said, what fitna are you talking about? As long as Umar is there, there can be no fitna. There was a man, Gandhi said, when people talk in history, Alexander the Great. Have you heard of Alexander the Great? He goes, how can you call Alexander the Great? When he was marching, yes, he made a big empire. And when he got to India, he wanted to go further. He was a young man with an army, came, they won many battles en route, but he wanted to go further. But his soldiers were fed up. They wanted to go back. Alexander said, let's go. No, said, we're not moving. We're going back. Alexander's with them, but they didn't want to budge. So he had to come back. En route, he caught an illness and he died. So this man, he said, Gandhi, his name was, he said, look, Muslims, Alexander, who people regard as one of the greatest commanders, he's with his army and they don't want to listen to him. Omar is in Medina and he's given an order to demote his undefeated commander who's just defeated the Romans and the Persians together, by himself. He gives an order for Khalid to step down and Khalid can't say a word. Look at the awe of Umar on a man who's defeated the Romans and the Persians by himself. If it wasn't for him, probably wouldn't have happened. He's such a man, if he says, everybody will go along because Khalid is saying. They're not going to turn his back from him. And because they know he's such a man. But Khalid dare not even utter a word against what Umar is saying. Look at the greatness of Umar. Allahu Akbar. So when he came, I just want to share with you the final battle of Khalid radiallahu anhu. Then after Damascus, then they laid siege then they captured Jerusalem. And when they laid a siege on Jerusalem, the people said, look, we'll give up Jerusalem if you get Umar here. So Umar radiallahu anhu came and they handed over the keys. Allahu Akbar. And when the Umar radiallahu, you all heard the story. He decided, he was Khalifatul Muslimin. He's overseen the fall of the Persians and the Romans, the mighty civilizations for 2,000 years. And he's the man who oversaw all that. He's leaving Medina and just him and his servant. They're not taking many horses and servants and luggage and baggage. Just him and his servant, they're coming down, and he says, look, we're going to take in turns. I'll walk and you ride, and you walk and I'll ride. And just one camel is enough. And then when they reach Jerusalem, people are expecting to welcome Umar radiallahu with a parade and glamour. And all they see is a man wearing dirty clothes, and he's holding the reins of a camel. There's a man sitting on the camel, and they're saying, oh, we heard your Amir is coming. Yeah, he's coming. That's him. Which one? No, the one holding the reins. That's your Amir? Allahu Akbar. When they walked in and he met the chief, the bishop, so they started talking. And Umar radiallahu anhu, the time for prayer came. And he said, we've got to it's time for prayer. After Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam passed away, while Rasulullah was alive, how far can I go? Huh? 5 minutes, inshallah. 5-10 minutes, yeah? Then we'll end. I know all of you are hungry. Food's getting cold? And 5-10 minutes, inshallah. And when Rasulullah was around, who used to give the azan? Bilal radiallahu anhu. After Rasulullah passed away, Bilal radiallahu anhu could no longer stay in Medina. Because whenever he would see Ashhadu anna Muhammadur Rasulullah, while Rasulullah was alive, he would look to Rasulullah, and he would say Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah. After Rasulullah passed away, when he gave azan, he couldn't see Rasulullah, so he couldn't give azan anymore. So he couldn't stay in Medina. So he left Medina, went to Sham. And with the intention, he's going to spend the rest of his life in jihad. So when the Muslims went to Sham and they captured Jerusalem, Bilal radiallahu anhu was part of the group. So everybody, as Bilal radiallahu anhu, he vowed he's never going to give azan again. That's it. He's done his last azan in Medina. So when he got there, Umar radiallahu, everybody knew if Bilal is going to listen to anybody, it's going to be Umar. He's one person, even Bilal can't say no to. So they all came to Umar radiallahu anhu and said, Umar, look, Bilal, we've always been asking him to hear the azan from the time of Rasulullah, but he never gives azan. But if you tell him, we're sure he won't say no. So Umar radiallahu anhu came to Bilal, Bilal, everybody wants to hear your azan. So Bilal radiallahu anhu said, Amirul Mu'mineen, I had vowed I was never going to give azan again after Rasulullah, but I can't say no to you. So he started giving azan, and when he said, Ashhadu anna Muhammadar Rasulullah, Bilal radiallahu anhu burst into tears, and everybody hearing the azan from the time of Rasulullah, Allahu Akbar, people couldn't hold back. They were going to pray, and he said to the Christian priest said, look, you pray here in our big church. Umar radiallahu anhu said, no. If I pray here, the Muslim will say, Umar's prayed here, this is our mosque. So he said, I will pray in the open. Then where he prayed, mashallah, they built a masjid in the name of Umar radiallahu anhu. Masjid Umar in Damascus, in Jerusalem. They handed over Jerusalem, and then there was one final battle. The Roman emperor, he gathered armies from all over. And another thing about Khalid was he used to choose the right spot for the battlefield. If you're in the wrong spot, your tactics can backfire. The best place to fight a battle. Now, one of the things he would do was he would have his back clear. No river, no mountain. So in case you need to retreat, you have to have the option. So he lured the Romans in such a way the Romans were trapped. They had a river behind. He had a clear back. And the battle lasted 6 days. And 6 days. Western historians have written that by any number, the Romans were at least 60, 70,000. And Muslims, maximum 30,000. And in those, Khalid bin Waleed, Abu Ubaidah bin Jarrah was commander. Umar had made him commander. But Abu Ubaidah said, oh Khalid, I want you to take command of the battle. Because when in battle, sometimes you need to make sudden decisions. And you are better at that than me. So he gave him command. And Khalid radiallahu anhu chose the place, and Allahu Akbar. The battle lasted 6 days. And by the time the battle finished after 6 days, Abu Jahl's son Ikrimah had become a Muslim in the meantime. He was Khalid's nephew. But they had grown up together, they were same age. And he was from Banu Makhzum, and so was Ikrimah, Banu Makhzum. And on the 4th or the 5th day, Ikrimah, son of Abu Jahl, would become a Muslim. When he would fight, Ikrimah would say to the Romans, I have fought against the Prophet of Allah and stood my ground. Don't think I'm going to turn my back to you today. Fighting against Rasulullah, I held my ground. And don't think I'm going to run today. There was one day, especially, the Muslims the Romans were getting the upper hand. So Ikrimah got 400 people and said, look, I want you all to give me allegiance on death. That we are either going to die or Allah give us victory. They were all martyred. Ikrimah radiallahu anhu was on death, breathing his last. Someone brought Khalid. Khalid, Ikrimah is breathing his last. So he came, took Ikrimah's head in his lap. And in his lap, Ikrimah passed away. And Khalid said, the son of Hantama still reckons Banu Makhzum haven't done enough for Islam. He's from Banu Makhzum, Ikrimah. They've given their lives, their whole family's been made shaheed. And he said Ibn Hantama, meaning Omar, his mother's name. His mother is his cousin. So, this was the way they would tease people. Umar still reckons, we haven't done enough for Islam. Look, every one of us has tasted shahadat on battlefield. And not that Umar looked down upon them. So after 6 days of battle, Western historians have written, Romans had lost almost 50,000 men, and Khalid had barely lost 3,000. He defeated the Romans and the Persians, and through all his campaigns, he was so careful. Umar radiallahu anhu used to give orders, look, don't jump into any danger where you're going to suffer, your men are going to suffer. He was always very careful, take the most precautions to save his men as well. Yes, okay, if you got to die, you got to die. But there's no point in jumping into danger where you're not going to come out alive. And so he defeated the Romans and the Persians. Napoleon in one battle lost 500,000. Khalid defeated the Romans and the Persians with barely at expense of 12 to 15,000 men. Well, it hasn't been done in history before and will never ever be done again. Allahu Akbar. Eventually, when the Romans were defeated, there was one last castle, known as the castle of Kansreen. They captured it. Abu Ubaidah radiallahu anhu made Khalid in charge of the castle. Khalid was a brave man with a big heart. And those who got a big heart as well as being brave, they're generous. So Khalid, he used to get a lot of share of wealth from the booty, but he would always share it with others. So when he became governor of Kansreen, then a poet came and did some poetry in honor of Khalid. So Khalid radiallahu anhu appreciated his poetry and gave him 10,000 dirhams as a gesture of token or reward. When Umar radiallahu anhu heard that's what's happened, he became furious. He sent a messenger. And this was I'll end here inshallah, 2 minutes. If they wanted to question someone in critical situation, they would tie their hands with their turban and then ask them. Umar radiallahu anhu sent a letter, tie Khalid's hands and ask him, why did he give that man money, 10,000 dirhams? Was it his own? Was it from Baytul Mal? If he did given it from Baytul Mal, he's done khianat. And if it's his own, he's been extravagant. So either way, hold him to account. Umar radiallahu anhu sent this letter asking Abu Ubaidah. Abu Ubaidah said, I can't do that to Khalid. I can't humiliate him in this way. Not me, tell Bilal to do it. So Umar radiallahu anhu told Bilal. Bilal went up to Khalid, took off his imama, tied his hands. Khalid, Amirul Mu'mineen is asking, where did you give him that money from? Was it from Baytul Mal? He goes, no. If you gave it from Baytul Mal, it's khianat. It's mine. Who gave you the right to give him so much reward? As Umar radiallahu anhu was of the opinion, if people like him do such a thing, other people to come will do even more. He might be careful that it's his personal money, but others won't care. So he didn't want Khalid setting a precedent for people later on to abuse their position. So then he summoned Khalid to Medina, then he came back. Then Khalid radiallahu anhu, then shortly after that, the plague of Amwas set in. It was like a bubonic plague, like COVID. 25,000 Sahaba died, including Abu Ubaidah, Muaz ibn Jabal, and all the people who used to fight alongside Khalid on his left and right. Most of them died. Then Khalid radiallahu anhu, for him it was too much. When he would look around and those people, they were not there, he decided it's time to hang up his sword. And then few years later, Khalid radiallahu anhu, Allah gave him death on bed. But Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, whosoever asks Allah for shahadat sincerely, man sa'ala Allahu shahadata bisidqin ballaghahu Allahu manazil ash-shuhada'i wa immata ala firashi. Anybody who asks Allah for shahadat sincerely, Allah will elevate him to the rank of shuhada even though he may die on a bed. Khalid wanted to die a shaheed on all his life. He said, there were occasions I used to jump in the thickest. Had it been anybody else, there's no way anybody was coming out alive. But because Rasulullah gave him the title, Saiful, nobody was ever going to kill Khalid. But thousands of shaheeds on one side, what Khalid achieved, he achieved. Others, they build on their victories with reputation, culture, inherited. But Khalid, he stood out when there was nothing. Other conquerors came, Salahuddin Ayyubi and others, but they there were millions and millions of other Muslims. But when Khalid was fighting, if he had lost even a single battle when he was fighting, then that would have been it. So Khalid couldn't afford to lose. Abu Bakr knew. Abu Bakr unleashed the sword, who Rasulullah said, sword of Allah. May Allah give Khalid the reward that he deserves. May Allah grant us love for these illustrious people. May Allah enable us to follow in their footsteps. May Allah unite us and raise us with them on the day of Qiyamah. Subhanallah bihamdi, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Ya Allah, we seek your mercy, forgiveness and blessings. Ya Allah, forgive us, Ya Allah. Forgive the whole ummah. Ya Allah, we are all your humble, sinful servants. We are nothing, Ya Allah. We eat the food that you provide, the water that you provide, Ya Allah, the clothes that you provide. Ya Allah, family, friends, these are all your blessings, Ya Allah. Iman, Islam, Quran, Ya Allah. We can't thank you enough. We are so sinful, but you are merciful, Ya Allah. Forgive us and guide us all, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, give these noblemen, Ya Allah, the fitting reward and the honor that they deserve, Ya Allah, on behalf of us and the whole ummah of your beloved Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى اللهم وسلم على سيدنا